The 2023 NFL Draft was full of amazing talents. Today, I want to talk about the 5 players who came out of nowhere and were the biggest steals of the 2023 NFL Draft. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to put together a list of the top 5 biggest steals of the 2023 NFL Draft. I decided not to use players who were taken in the first round. So for example, we're not going to be talking about CJ Stroud as a steal in this video. We've glazed him enough. We're also not going to be talking about any high tier second round picks such as a Brian Branch or Joey Porter Jr. or Sam Laporta, even though those guys were incredible value for a second round pick. This list is going to consist primarily of players who are either undrafted or picked beyond the early session of the second round. With that being said, let's hop into the list. But to begin our list, I want to talk about De'Von Achane going to the Miami Dolphins in the third round, pick number 84. There were a lot of concerns about De'Von Achane, and to be honest with you, I think most of the concerns were pretty valid. He was very small, but very explosive. He's a guy who played in track and field and did a lot of things for the Texas A&M Aggies, but there was also a ton of concerns about his general size and potential injury risk that may fall into him in the NFL. And even though, yes, he did suffer some injuries throughout the year, I still think that long-term he's going to be a fantastic player for the Miami Dolphins. Last year for the Miami Dolphins, he only had 102 carries, but was able to get 804 rushing yards to go along with 8 rushing touchdowns. That gives him a 7.9 yards per carry, which is by far the number 1 in the NFL. This is somebody who isn't just a running back. You can also trust him to be a really good receiving back as well. To get a guy who's only 22 years of age and had a 7.9 yards per carry average to go along with 8 rushing touchdowns definitely does tell you this is going to be a guy who's going to be a part of your long-term future. With the Miami Dolphins having a lot of different concerns on their roster, primarily along the offensive line and in the defense, being able to draft somebody in the third round and for them to play at this level has got to be a relieving feeling for them. I think De'Von Achane has a very solid chance of being a perennial Pro Bowl level player who's going to be in the league for quite some time, whether it's as a starter or a change of pace back. Next up at number 4, we're going to talk about the LA Rams drafting Byron Young in the third round with pick number 78. Byron Young was somebody who was sort of seen as a question mark coming out of Tennessee. He had really good measurables and seemed to be somebody who you could play in a lot of different positions, but he did have a couple of concerns coming out of college, and well, he translated quite nicely in the NFL. He had sort of an up and down season with a lot more ups than downs. I think that on the year, you definitely will take the impact that he had with the 42 solo tackles, 11 assisted tackles, 8 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He's somebody who you can kind of have a lot of versatility with, whether it's playing him on the inside, the outside, playing him from the linebacker level. For a guy who was taken in the third round, for him to have 8 sacks in his rookie year definitely does tell you that he's going to get a lot more work moving forward, especially with the retirement of Aaron Donald. This is going to be a team that's going to need versatility along the defensive line to create pressures, and getting a guy like Byron Young in the third round, not to mention this is a Rams team that has picked up a lot of really good defensive linemen in the third and fourth round. It's just all going to push together a very solid front four on that defense for the LA Rams, especially when you compare him to a lot of the pass rushers that were taken in the back end of the first round. Byron Young is better than all those guys. Will McDonald hasn't panned out. Byron Young has. Mozzie Smith thus far has not panned out. Byron Young has. Brian Bursay hasn't panned out quite yet to the extent we wanted him to, but Byron Young has. Now, I know that's an unfair comparison given the fact that we're talking about guys who were developmental players, whereas Byron Young kind of was seen as a bit of a finished product because of his age. But given the fact that this was a guy who you were taking in the third round, he's obviously panned out a lot better than those guys, and I think as time goes on, I guess we'll have to wait to see if that stands up. But at number 3, we're going to talk about Ivan Pace, the undrafted linebacker to the Minnesota Vikings. And yes, I said that right. We're talking about an undrafted linebacker who finished with 70 solo tackles, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble. And I think what's even more impressive about this guy is his PFF grades. Again, yes, PFF is not the greatest thing to tell if a player is good or not, but it definitely does give you a slight indication of whether or not they're good or not. Ivan Pace last year had an overall PFF grade of 77.1, a run defense grade of 61.2, a pass rush grade of a 78, and a coverage grade of a 77.7. This is also somebody who played in a ton of snaps on this defense, and next year is going to be their full-time starter in that linebacker position. Linebacker is traditionally a piece that you can typically find in the back end of the NFL draft, but usually not an undrafted player. I mean, there's a ton of really good linebackers, such as a Fred Warner who was taken in the back end of his respected draft. And now you have an Ivan Pace Jr. who may not ever be like a Fred Warner level, but is going to be a solid linebacker for this Minnesota Vikings team moving forward. We're talking about a 23-year-old player who, again, 70 solo tackles in his rookie year. Somebody who gained the trust of his defensive coordinator as time went on, and now seems to be lined up to be the starter for this team in the long-term future. Linebacker is a super underrated position, and it's also a super difficult position because it's one of the most physically demanding positions in the NFL. It's honestly one of the reasons why this is sort of seen as the running back position of the defense. It's a spot that typically you're not going to put a ton of money and investments into because the injuries pile up so quickly and players could just typically fall off a cliff. But being able to get a guy who was undrafted and has this much potential has got to be an amazing feeling. I want to give a special shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest and fastest growing fantasy sports app available. I know the NFL season may be over, however, Underdog has plenty of ways to entertain us while we wait for the new season. You may not know this about me, but I am a massive NBA fan, and with Underdog's Pick'em games, I can earn some serious cash. Simply pick higher or lower on 2 to 5 player stats, and you'll have a chance to win up to 20 times your money in a single night. I personally love playing these Pick'em games on game day to spice up my afternoon. And all you have to do is use the link in the description below to sign up today using promo code MetroSports, and you can get your first deposit doubled up to $100 as well as an instant Pick'em special. Check the map on the screen right now to see if your state qualifies, and I want to give a massive thank you to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. But at number 2, we're going to talk about Tank Dell going to the Houston Texans in the 3rd round. Last year, Tank Dell did suffer through a couple injuries, but despite, he still finished with 47 receptions for 709 yards and 7 touchdowns. Again, had it not been for injuries, we're talking about a guy who would have easily surpassed 1,000 yards on the season, and him and CJ Stroud are low-key going to create one of the best young wide receiver quarterback combos in the league as of today. This Houston Texans team just brought in Stephon Diggs to add even more bodies into that wide receiving room, and you're now going to have basically 3 wide receiver ones all fighting for reps. You got Stephon Diggs, you got Tank Dell, and you also have Nico Collins, who are all going to be fantastic fits alongside CJ Stroud. Now, Tank Dell might be a little bit small and skinny, and that's part of the reason why he did fall in the NFL draft. But we're talking about somebody who can both play on the inside and on the outside, and again, having the versatility of guys like Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs around him is only going to make Tank Dell a better player in the NFL. When you're able to find basically a wide receiver 1 in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, that's always going to be an amazing thing. And let's be honest, Houston Texans absolutely knocked out the 2023 NFL draft, getting guys like Jaret Patterson, I believe, in the 6th round, Tank Dell in the 3rd round, CJ Stroud with pick number 2. This is going to be looked at as a revolutionary draft for the Houston Texans as they look forward to being one of the best teams in the NFL next year and for the long-term future. But at number 1, I think we all know where I'm going with this. We are, of course, talking about Puka Nacua. In just his rookie season, he was able to get over 150 targets, which is the 7th highest in the NFL, 105 receptions, 1,486 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Puka Nacua was seen as a wild card player. Nobody really knew when to take the guy because he just was a very raw player with a lot of really odd abilities. He was sort of seen as somebody who could play both inside and outside, and well, that's basically what he's been able to do in the NFL level. I think the concern for Puka Nacua was, what was his level of upside? Is this somebody who we can project to be even a decent wide receiver 2 in the NFL? And that's part of the reason why he fell so far in the draft. But he was drafted into the perfect situation. I'm not going to say that the only reason why he's successful is because he was with the LA Rams, but I definitely do think that that team and that way they play football has definitely elevated Puka Nacua's game to where now he's one of the best players in the entire NFL. I also think this marriage between him and Cooper Kupp and some of the other guys in this offense is going to produce a fantastic offense for this LA Rams team. Similar to the Houston Texans, who just had a revolutionary draft in their own regards, I think you could also say the same thing about the LA Rams, who had a fantastic draft this year, getting guys like Byron Young on the defense and Puka Nacua. We're talking about a rookie who set the record with 1,486 yards and had a stellar rookie season, making it to a Pro Bowl and being an all-pro level player. Do I think Puka Nacua will be a continuous 1,400 yards a year guy? It's hard to say. Honestly, it's one of those things where defenses are going to adjust to his level of play and his style of play and probably going to put more coverage on his side. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops when he's getting a lot more of the attention on him. Last year, defenses were so concerned about what Cooper Kupp could do to him because of, well, Cooper Kupp being Cooper Kupp. And now that Cooper Kupp has suffered some injuries, has gotten slightly worse and older, it's going to be up to Puka Nacua to continue to step his game up, and I truthfully do think he's going to do it pretty much with ease. Again, it's hard to really underestimate what he was able to do in his rookie season. 105 receptions for 1,400 plus yards out of a rookie wide receiver who we really had no expectations for. I think for Puka Nacua, the sky is the limit, and I think that he could easily be a top 5 wide receiver at some point in his career. But that is going to conclude the video. Again, if you guys want a part 2 to this where I talk more about some of these 2nd round guys, let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.